My name is Caroline Fry. I'm the Media and Advocacy Manager with Colorado Common Cause. Just a couple little housekeeping things. We will have some more food out. The food actually already came out. So if you would like some more food for second round, please get some. Please do not trip over this mic. We are live streaming on Facebook for this event. Hopefully everyone out in the internet world is picking me up right now. And the mics are working. So please do watch yourself and don't trip over the mic. Bathrooms out here, you'll just kind of have to walk around the speakers out here and to the left. And then we're going to have servers come around to take drink orders if you'd like another drink, or you could also go to the bar. So this evening, what we're talking about, reforming the Electoral College. Very hot topic right now. Not a new issue for Common Cause. I've had many people on Reddit and also Facebook, social media platforms say, oh, well, you guys are only doing this event. You only care about it because you're upset that Trump got elected, which is not the case at all. We're not a partisan organization. We're an issue-based organization, and we've been doing this work for over 10 years. So this isn't something that we just decided to hop on the bandwagon because we're upset. We feel very strongly about electoral college reform. The way we currently elect the President of the United States goes against the basic democratic principles of one person, one vote. So we believe that every voter in every state across the nation should be able to have an equally weighted vote, no matter what state that you're living in. Our current system incentivizes presidential candidates to ignore the states where they cannot possibly win or lose. Instead, they only compete in a handful of swing states. So here's one example that I found interesting. In the 2012 election, 98% of campaign events took place in only 10 states. So that's almost 100% of campaign events for president took place in 10 states. Over 25% of them, so over a full quarter, took place in just one state. And someone will get a high five from me if they can call the state that it was. Ohio, you got it. Who was it?
Harvey.
Awesome. So Coloradans and other people around the United States have recognized that this is a problem. Here in Colorado, we have tried to introduce the legislation in 2006, 2007, 2009, and most recently in this year, 2017. Unfortunately, has not been able to pass both houses of the Colorado General Assembly up until this point. So what are our options? How do we get here? Where are we going with this? To delve into this deeper, our two featured guests this evening. First, we have Nancy Crow. She is the president-elect for the Colorado League of Women Voters. She has been the past president for the League of Women Voters in Marquette, Michigan, and also the spokesperson for the League of Women Voters in Larimer County. Previously, she taught mathematics at the high school and community college levels and served as department chair and has consulted on curriculum development. And she is also an avid reader of history and politics. And then we have Senator Andy Kurz. Doug. Yeah. What's your last name, though?
Roper.
Doug Roper. Okay, great. He's here representing Senator Andy Kerr, who represents Senate District 22, which is, and let me know if I get this wrong, Lakewood, Edgewater, and Littleton. Those are the areas. Great. So he's been in the Senate since 2013, and before that, he was in the Colorado's House of Representatives. And he'll be talking tonight about Senate Bill 99, which was recently introduced this legislative session and unfortunately was killed in committee. And I also want to point out our executive director, Elena Nunez. For those of you who do not know her, she's very knowledgeable about many topics, including this topic, so she'll be jumping in as needed. So we want this to be an open discussion, so feel free, raise your hand if you have a question. More of an open call and response versus a formal presentation. So without further ado, Nancy, do you want to come take it away?
Sure.
Great. Is that okay?
Fine. I just want to mention that the League of Women Voters is not a Johnny-come-lately to this position either. And I will talk about that in a little bit. We've been at this since 1970. Okay, I'm going to start with just a little history because I am a history buff. We were taught about the large and small states debate in the Constitutional Convention. I think that's how they referred to it. However, the real conflict between the states was caused not by the differences of size, but other circumstances, partly from climate, but principally from the effects of having or not having slaves. As is always the case in history, economic forces were at work. The Industrial Revolution was at hand. The major industry was production of cloth from cotton. Three things were needed to produce the raw product, cotton, to fuel this industry: climate for growing cotton, abundance of free or cheap labor, and abundance of free or cheap labor. Industrialists found that the only place in the world, and they did look over the world, that all three requirements were found in the United States if the Constitution did not prohibit slavery. The livelihood of the people in the North as well as the South depended on the products of slave labor, on import and export policies, and the running of related services. The United States Constitution is absolutely silent on the issue of slavery. But slavery was a driving force in writing the Constitution. Virginia was the largest state, but 40% of its population was enslaved. The Virginia Plan called for a supreme national government, the legitimacy of which would come directly from the people, but which would actually serve as a check on the excesses of democracy within the states themselves. The plan was modified, but the Electoral College was born from the Virginia Plan. Slaves would count three-fifths of a person for apportionment in the House. Each state, you know this, but I'm just repeating, each state would get 2 senators. Each state would have a number of presidential electors equal to the total number of the U.S. Congress members, number of House and Representatives members plus the 2 senators. These electors will be chosen by the states with no specifics whatever of how they were to be chosen. Now, the Virginia Plan was adopted, and it seemed maybe kind of lost in history, but in 8 out of the first 9 presidential elections, a Virginian was elected president. John Adams, he's our only person of the first 9 elections. When the Founding Fathers established the Electoral College, they envisioned that it would serve as a deliberative body that would ensure that the general population, and these are Hamilton's words, would not elect someone not qualified for the office, and to guard against foreign influence in our election. Now, I spared you Hamilton's real words because I can't say them all, you know, how Hamilton wrote. Okay, what happened? Well, originally some electors were chosen by state legislatures, but with the creation of political parties, electors, as was true with all elected officials, increasingly identified with a particular party and voted accordingly. After 1836, electors were chosen not by the state legislatures, but through a statewide popular vote in every state except South Carolina. So by 1836, it was winner-take-all as we have now, except for our 2, Nebraska and Maine, which are a little bit different. But basically, the political parties selected the electors. The total electors went for whichever party won the statewide popular vote. South Carolina held out to 1860, probably a whole different story there. So after 1836, the Electoral College ceased to act as a deliberative body. Today, all states except Maine and Nebraska have a winner-take-all system for electing electors. The Electoral College, as created, and for the reason for it was created, no longer are germane. Although the United States has the first modern design for democracy, the nation hasn't corrected such basic anomalies as the lack of congressional voting representatives for Washington, D.C., resident, or addressed the undemocratic Electoral College. just as a sidelight, every year at CSU, every presidential election year at CSU, I've been asked for the last few years to come and talk to foreign students about our election process. And they always ask, why doesn't Washington, D.C. have representation? So this is something that the world pays attention to. A distinguishing feature of the American democracy is that it is rife with internal inconsistencies as a consequences of the 10th Amendment, which grants states control over any aspect of government not identified in the Constitution as belonging to the federal government. This causes us to have voting procedures that vary from state to state. It's a glaring example of the internal inconsistencies that we have in our election process. Now, how do other democracies view us? Newer democracies have incorporated the basic fundamentals of the U.S. Constitution, fundamental human rights, due process, separation of power. But when it comes to the way that we choose those who represent us, providing ways for all voices to be heard and ensuring the fairness of election, they have all looked to other models. Now, I said we're not new to, the League of Women Voters is not new to this process. In 1970, the League of Women Voters came to a position, and if you're not familiar with the League, we come from positions from study and the consensus by all the local leagues. And the position adopted in 1970 was, the League of Women Voters of the United States believes that the direct popular vote method for electing the president and vice president is essential to representative government. The League of Women Voters believes, therefore, that the Electoral College should be abolished. In the 2008 National Convention of the League of Women Voters, we adopted a study of the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and the 2010 convention, we adopted by concurrence to support the National Popular Vote Compact as another method for selecting the president until such time as the Electoral College has been abolished. So that's the League's stand on this. Just one more comment about what the League is doing right now. We have decided at the national level to concentrate our efforts and what we feel we do best in speaking to the election process in this country. So as we now not have a program of study, but we have a campaign which we call Making Democracy Work. And the three tenets of this new campaign is voter protection and mobilization, election reform, which will be Electoral College, alternative voting methods, and perhaps even proportional representation, and then to look at money in politics and redistricting. So that is the League's point of view.
Hey guys, my name is Doug Roper. I am the legislative aide for State Senator Andy Kerr. Senator Kerr represents Senate District 22, which is Lakewood, Edgewater, parts of western Littleton, and some unincorporated Denver County. This year, he introduced legislation that would make Colorado join the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. And what the bill does is, when there's enough states who have a majority of electors, once they pass this bill, then all of those states will give their electoral votes to whoever won the national popular vote. Just wanted to thank a few people, Caroline and Common Cause, for putting on this event. John Koza and Mark Ruskin, who wrote Every Vote is Equal, and also started the website National Popular Vote. They've really helped us out on helping get this bill introduced and passed, but unfortunately it didn't. Representative Paul Rosenthal, he was our House sponsor for this year. Lois Court and Stephen Fenberg, senators, were the Democratic members of the committee that voted for the bill. And then also Elizabeth Steele from Common Cause, who testified on the bill. and other testifiers like Melissa Hart, who was our constitutional scholar from CU Denver, who testified in favor of the bill, and then Daniel Sage and Jesse Kumin of Best Democracy, who helped organize and get people to come in and testify on the bill. With that, testimony on Senate Bill 99 for the national popular vote, it was 2.5 hours. There were, right now in the legislature, it's a split. So Democrats control the House, Republicans control the Senate, and then the Democrats control the governorship. So we were started in the Senate. Unfortunately, the bill died on a 3-2 party line vote. And this was after 21 people came to the state capitol to testify in person to support the bill, as well as 13 other people from around the state who testified remotely. Those people came from Alamosa, Grand Junction, Durango, and La Junta. So remote testimony is pretty new, but it's a great feature for rural areas to make their voice heard in case they can't come to the state capitol and testify in person. The only institutional opposition that testified against the bill was the Secretary of State's office. They felt that, this Colorado, our voice in the election wasn't going to be as, we're a swing state. So they were worried that campaigns weren't going to come to the state anymore, and therefore we should not have this bill. With all the organizing efforts, our office received over 200 emails in favor of the bill. And then Senator Stephen Fenberg, who was the Democratic committee member on the bill, he was also a co-sponsor, he received over 2,000 emails and phone calls in support of the bill. So this is not an isolated issue. People agree with this idea, and it just goes to show that this was a very important bill, and people feel very strongly about it. But it's not the first time that the bill has been introduced. The first time the bill was introduced in Colorado was in 2006. Senator Gordon and Representative Plant introduced Senate Bill 223, passed out of the Senate, died in the House. The House was Republican-controlled at that time. The next year, Senator Gordon again introduced the bill with Representative Palmer. Again, passed out of the Senate, died in the House. And then in 2009, Senator Kerr first introduced this bill as he was the prime sponsor in the House. He sponsored that with Senator Chris Romer. And in 2009, the president elected at that time was Barack Obama. So with this bill being introduced this year, it just goes to show that Senator Kerr was not, this isn't a reaction to Trump winning the election. It's pretty, set forth that he wants something to be changed. And this isn't a partisan issue, and it's not a reaction to the current, election of the president at the moment. Just wanted to end with a little bit of testimony from what Senator Kerr said to the committee. I found it pretty moving, and just wanted to share that with you guys. So Colorado is an independent state with diverse opinions, but that is not how electoral votes have been cast. In the 10 years since this measure has been first raised in Colorado, many in this room have never had their vote given any weight at all by our delegation to the Electoral College. As it happens, the candidates from my party have benefited from that during this time, but in the long run, nobody really benefits from bad systems. In a country where every 9 elections results in a winner having the fewest votes, it is a bipartisan imperative to find a better way. A very bipartisan group of people from across the political spectrum believe that this national popular vote is that better way. It is an idea that has been endorsed by Donald Trump, Rush Limbaugh, also Bernie Sanders, exactly. Tom Tancredo, Newt Gingrich, 10 states plus the District of Columbia, also 3,000 state legislators, and by the majority of those polled, both nationwide and right here in Colorado. If we honored the voices of red voters in blue states, blue voters in red states, and the voices of independent voters everywhere, candidates would make their case to all of America. They will find their constituencies within every region and reach out everywhere that feel minds can be changed. Rather than dwelling for weeks on the whims of faithless electors, we could give all the citizens of our district confidence that their votes matter. Some years, my candidate wins. Some years, my candidate loses. But every year, both my vote and your vote should count equally. It is a principle that should be the bedrock of our democracy, and it is what the framers called on us to preserve. That's all I have, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Here, I'll give this to you. Also repeat the question.
This legislative session to bring it forth again so it doesn't go to the state affairs.
So the question was, is there the possibility of another bill being introduced in the House? And Representative Rosenthal, he was our House sponsor on the bill. He was going to be, he was thinking about introducing the bill in the House so that it would pass out of one chamber, but decided against it, and so we don't know if there's another bill that's going to be introduced again next year, but there won't be another bill this year that will be introduced. But with that, each legislator is only able to introduce 5 bills in their respective chamber. So they sort of have to pick and choose their priorities. And if they had the ability to introduce more, I'm sure that the popular vote bill would have been introduced again in the House this year.
And I'll just add, I think one other thing to keep in mind is that even though we're not likely to see another bill this year, that doesn't mean you can't be contacting your legislators right now to let them know that you wish they had the opportunity to vote on it in the Senate if they weren't on the committee. If they were on the committee, let them know what you thought of their vote. And if you think it's something the House should take up, certainly reach out and let them know. Because I think this will be a long campaign, and having people continue to raise the issue, we thought it was important to keep the conversation going even though the bill was dead, because we just need to keep the momentum on. So there is an action on our website. I'll just make a plug. If you go to Colorado Common Cause, you can contact your legislator and let them know if you think that this is something that they should sponsor. Share your thoughts with them. Let's go to Lynn and then we'll go back. Yeah.
I was also thinking on the popular vote here. What would happen if you could have the electoral votes proportion in each state according to the popular vote of that state? Would that basically do the same thing? Would that interfere? You still have to get your 270.
I can just speak to this. If the League of Women Voters looked at all kinds of things like that in the 70s, and essentially, if you're wanting to vote one person, one vote, the popular vote, direct popular vote of the president is the most democratic, most representative way to do it.
And I'll just add, one of the other things that has come up in some states is the idea of allocating electoral votes by congressional district. So instead of having all of Colorado's electoral votes go to the candidate who wins the popular vote, you'd say each district can decide. That's something we have not supported because, especially when you have significant gerrymandering, it just distorts the representation even more. So we think the national popular vote is the best way to make sure that every vote counts equally, and a person, whether they're a Republican voting in California, a Democrat voting in Texas, their vote has the same weight no matter what the population of the state or how it breaks down is.
And that was the league's.
Yeah. So let's go, well, we'll go there, then we'll come back and then go, yeah.
Can you just hold up that book?
Yep.
That everybody
Yep.
It'll let people know that you can download it for free on the web. It's a big PDF.
Yep.
It has everything you need.
Yes. So if you'd like a little light reading, there is a book available online called Every Vote Equal, and it has everything you could ever dream to know about National Popular Vote and more, and you can download it for free online at, I think the website is nationalpopularvote.com, is that right? Yes.
Yeah.
So, yes.
And a hard copy is $5.
Yeah, so you can order a hard copy. It's also a good workout. It's quite heavy. Let's come back up here, then we'll go back there.
I'm glad you mentioned gerrymandering because I wonder a couple of things. One, in Colorado, with the way the current districts are drawn, does every vote count equally? And secondly, if the districts were drawn on a more logical and less political basis, which I think would require a citizens commission rather than any party involvement, it seems to me it would be easier to get the bill through the legislature.
So that question was about Colorado's approach to redistricting and gerrymandering and whether that also provides a barrier to moving this legislation at the Capitol. And the person also said that one thing that might help would be if we had a citizen commission to draw the lines. And that's something that the League has a long history of working on, and Nancy, I'll let you speak to that. Common Cause has as well. Right now what we have is kind of a hybrid system in Colorado, because we have a commission that's not entirely citizen-driven. It's more of a politician commission that takes input and draws the lines, and that's how we draw the lines for our legislative districts. Congressional districts, though, are drawn in theory by the legislature, but the last couple times they've had a little trouble with that, and they haven't been able to agree on a map, and it's gone to the courts. So that is something that the League and Common Cause and many others think would be a good improvement, is to have an independent commission that could take input and draw lines that allow people to be represented by the candidate that best represents their values versus having more of a partisan kind of approach to line drawing.
Summed it up. Another thing to put in your hat and think about is proportional representation instead of having to draw districts. If all the nations that are in the European Union have to have some sort of proportional representation. Basically what that means is we have 7 congressional districts in Colorado. You hold an election, if 60% of the people vote for the Democrats, you get 60% of that, which would be 4 representatives, and the Republican Party would get 4. It would also facilitate third parties. So that is something else, another issue, but no other country in the world draw these little wiggly lines like we do. And there's all kinds of hybrids on that proportional representation, but that's the simplest form.
Let's go to the back.
So at the hearing, which actually was very compelling, Lois Ford at the end said, we need to go to the people and have a vote and do something about this. So is there anything in the works along those lines for you guys?
So the question was, is there anything non-legislative wise to make sure that this legislation gets passed? With another bill not being introduced in the House, there is talk among a few groups that they're probably just going to try to get it on the ballot in the next, I think, congressional, so 2018. So there is involvement in that, and I think there is a lot of motivation to get that on the ballot. Since it didn't make it out of committee this year, and also with the sort of the way legislation goes is kind of ride the wave, and even though this is such an important issue, next year it might not be picked up so much by the press, but getting it on the ballot for 2018 might really cause some waves. Are you guys?
We have not been a part of that. I think we've got someone. There's a flyer, the one person, one vote flyer. You can pick one up on your way out to get involved and get more information. Oh. Sorry, friends on Facebook. There are flyers that you can take to learn more about the effort. So I would say just grab one, learn more. I would continue, though, to talk to your legislators, because going to the ballot is not an inexpensive proposition. It takes a lot of resources. So I think knowing that we can't put anything on the ballot until 2018, it's definitely worth another shot in the meantime. So I would just encourage you to keep the drumbeat going. All right, we're going to go to the other side of the room. We've been neglecting our friends on this side.
Yeah, doesn't it have to be national? What good does it do if Colorado passes that?
Yep. So that's a great question. The question was, don't we have to do this nationally? What difference does it make if we do it? And that's completely right. The way the National Popular Vote Compact works is it only goes into effect when enough states have joined to hit the 270 vote threshold. So right now there are 165 electoral votes from various states and D.C. that have said we're in once everyone else is. So you don't have to give up your electoral votes until there's enough to hit 270. So Colorado, if we were to pass it, we would join the other 165 electoral votes, and then when we got to 270, the compact would go into effect. Is there a question in the back, Tina? Yeah.
Yeah. So the question was why, or who are the people who voted against it on a party line vote? So the committee, the State Affairs Committee in the Senate is split. It's 3 Republicans on the committee, 2 Democrats. So the Republicans on the committee was, well, it was actually a musical chairs of some sort that day. There was actually 5 Republicans on the committee, but all at different times. So originally, whoever is on State Affairs is the chairman's Ray Scott out of Grand Junction, Jerry Sonnenberg out of Sterling, and then Vicki Marble. She's sort of Weld County, Broomfield area. But what ended up being the vote was, I think, Owen Hill from Colorado Springs was on the committee. He voted against it. Sonnenberg was on the committee at the time, but then, Ray Scott left, and I think Kent Lambert from Colorado Springs was on the committee at the time. So those were the Senator Lambert, Lambert, Sonnenberg, and Ray Scott were the 3 no votes on the bill.
And I'll just add, I think this is an issue that after the election, a lot of people view it as a way to kind of redebate the outcome of 2016. I think for all of us, certainly, for the League and Common Cause, we think it's just the right policy regardless of who the winner was. Historically, there's great support among both Democrats and Republicans, as well as unaffiliated voters, for national popular vote. It's not a partisan issue. And so it's unfortunate that because of 2016, it's becoming more polarized, but historically, it wasn't something that was a real partisan issue. Let's go back there.
What are the other states that are part of this? I have that list.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get the list.
I know that there are 11.
And do they follow that?
So while Nancy's getting the list, the question was what other states have adopted it. And the way the compact works is right now they all continue to award their electoral votes the way they always have. They'll only start moving to the national popular vote once we hit 270 in the compact. All right, so here we go. 10 states plus the District of Columbia. So D.C., Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Washington, Vermont, California, Rhode Island, and New York. So total is 165 electoral votes. So we're, little more than halfway there. Yeah. So this is 165 of the 270 needed. 586? I thought it was 30. Wasn't 530? 538. Yeah, because 535 plus the District of Columbia. Yeah. Little civics quiz too. All right, on the couch. Yeah. So the question was, are other states looking at this? And there are a lot of states that are debating this issue right now. 16, Nancy says, a combination of red and blue states. I think some are also thinking about the ballot initiative process as a way to do it, so it's definitely a hot issue in a lot of places. Let's go here.
The list of states you read off are almost all blue states. I don't see what it is about the idea of a national popular vote that would be particularly, that would favor one party over the other. I don't understand the opposition. Can somebody summarize what their case is against this?
Sure. Do you want us all offer some thoughts?
Basically, is the Republican Party is the minority party, and so this is one way. I'm just putting some partisans into it, but since they are the minority party, they think they have a higher bar to win by voting for the for a popular vote. There are ways that maybe they can manipulate the election a little bit more through the Electoral College, and it has happened that way.
And also in 2012, Donald Trump, our now president, he went on Twitter to go on a rant about how the Electoral College was a big fraud. And I don't know, I guess I just throw that out there. Some Republicans have expressed support for it in the past. I don't know if they express support right now, but you know, Newt Gingrich and Donald Trump, Tom Tancredo, those are all people who support the bill.
I think some of the other arguments you hear for states like Colorado that are swing states, you hear if we were to join the compact and it were to go into effect, we would get less attention, so that wouldn't be as good for us, so we get more attention because of the current Electoral College approach. Some people say that you would see more expensive campaigns because you'd have to talk to more voters, so that's another reason. The other big argument that I don't think we've talked about is that it would distort the process and give too much of a voice to large states. And so the Electoral College protects small states over large states. And, you know, I think that the thing to keep in mind with that is that if you are a voter in a large state that's not competitive, you don't see the candidate. So we're already disenfranchising and giving a lesser voice to a lot of voters because they happen to be in a state that's not considered competitive. So those are some of the arguments you hear. Yeah. Yeah. And so for the folks on Facebook, the other argument, which I think is an important one, is that it distorts representation. If we had the national popular vote, it wouldn't give as great a voice to rural communities. So right now, having the Electoral College really requires that rural communities get a voice that way. So that's another argument that comes up. Yep. 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 Other questions? All right, we got one in the back. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so another, I think, just thing to think about is if we had something like this, would it encourage more people to vote? And I think that's a good, one of the reasons I think it, you know, that it makes a lot of sense is that it does encourage, if you are a voter in a minority party in a state that is clearly controlled by the other state, you don't have a lot of motivation to vote for president because you know it's not going to make a difference. And I think this does encourage hopefully more dialogue and more engagement in states that aren't getting that attention. I mean, we don't have that problem in Colorado. We are, you know, pretty solidly purple, but, you know, a lot of other states don't see political ads. They don't get the candidate attention, and they aren't as encouraged to participate.
One of the biggest threats to our democracy is our lack of participation. When we had between 55 and 58, I've seen 55 and I've seen 58% of the eligible voters voting in the last presidential election democracy cannot survive and thrive. I shouldn't say survive, but cannot thrive if we don't have more turning out. One thing about California, right now, California probably has more of an impact because all of their 55 votes go towards one candidate. But there's a lot of people. I think if you're looking at that, we've called them the solidly blue state, but only 60% of their people vote in Democrat. So there's a lot of voices there that are not heard for the other party, so maybe their impact would be less. There's a mathematical formula that shows that they would be less, but it's kind of complicated.
So, what can we do now to help you? There you go.
So what can all of you guys do to help get this passed? Definitely, if we want to do this through the legislature, write to your senator, write to your state representative, call them. But also, this is a state thing. This is a state issue. So Congress could do it nationally. They could make sure that the popular. Well, actually, no. Never mind. Electors, the way states, give out their electors is up to them. But that doesn't mean there couldn't be a constitutional amendment to change that. But to see a bill introduced next year, getting as much being involved and reaching out to other people, talking with other people, this isn't a partisan issue. It is a nonpartisan issue. And so speaking with the other side about it also helps. But if you want to get it through the legislature, talk to your representatives. But with a ballot initiative, find a group that is involved with it and try to, give yourself to the cause. And I think that's the best way we can do it.
Yeah.
I know. So there are a few groups. I know Best Democracy. They have a Facebook page. I think Progress Now might be involved with it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we have an action on our website that you can use if you want to contact your legislators. I mean, I think there's a couple pieces. I mean, in the short term, I think it is talking to your legislators and talking to other people. I mean, it's great to see you all. We've got a full room of people who are interested in this issue. It's not dinner table conversation throughout the state. And especially if we're going to have to take it to the voters, spending the next year to really educate community groups. If you're a member of a Rotary or a book club, make a presentation on National Popular Vote. Get people talking about it so that if there is a ballot measure, there is a groundswell that will make it happen. Because, as I said, running a ballot measure isn't easy. It's possible, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of people. I think the best thing we can do, and a lot of money, the best thing we can do in 2017 is really educate our fellow Coloradans about the issue. So there's information on our website, Colorado Common Cause. There's the group that's coming together. There's some information on the table. But really, I think just starting to talk to other folks about this is important.
We have information on our
And the League of Women Voters as well has information and resources as well.
Can we take one more?
One more, and then we'll,
This is kind of on a slightly smaller subject. Can you talk all about, and maybe you don't know about Senate Bill 138, which is about how the conduct of elections is going to occur? And there's a small section in this bill that talks about the people who watch the elections, and that they're defining now the only time that you can watch the elections when their actual vote is taking place, which eliminates poll watchers from checking the ballot to make sure it's correct, watching the testing of voting machines, actually watching the elections, and then after the election's over, if there's any errors or mistakes or questions. And that's being voted on in the Senate committee, I believe, on March 6th. That little section there really starts to limit the effect that we as voters can have in the election. So that's something we can do right now. That would be pretty important. I don't know whether you know anything about that or.
I can talk about it. I don't know if the lead took a position.
Yeah, I haven't taken this
So the question was about Senate Bill 138, which has to do with the role of watchers in our elections. And this is something that there's been a lot of conversation about because Colorado law allows watchers who are appointed by political parties or ballot measures to witness and verify the activities of an election. And it's an important safeguard to make sure that elections are being conducted well. And historically what that meant is that watchers would be at polling places in neighborhoods with a list of electors so they could keep track of who had voted and who hadn't and make sure that there wasn't any ballot box stuffing or anything like that. Now, we no longer run elections like that. We've made a lot of changes. We now have vote by mail for every voter, as well as the option to vote at voter service centers where you can go anywhere in your county. And the law has not really kept up, so there's a lot of ambiguity about what watchers can do and what they can't. So the Secretary of State convened a working group last summer, so the summer of 2015, 2 years ago, to look at this issue and figure out, are there ways we could modernize that law? There was a lot of discussion and debate. We were part of that group. There were election officials that were part of the group. There were other advocates. And this bill represents some of what the group agreed to. Not everyone in the group, but some of us in the group agreed to. And one of the key provisions about the bill is what does it mean to when can you watch an election? Because election work happens year-round. County clerks are making decisions about how to hire staff, how to allocate resources, where to put voting locations. And so one of the questions is what's the conduct of an election? And the question was about this question of what does it mean to define the conduct of an election? And it says, among other things, it's when election activities are happening, or more specifically, when voters are present. And so that's an area that's gotten a lot of debate about whether it should be broader. So if an election official is going to the printer with the ballots, is that something that everyone should be allowed to come along? Now, I will say we support the bill. One of the things that I think there's some disagreement about is whether or not it prevents people from participating in the machine testing before and after. And I think, based on other provisions in law as well as the bill, it still allows that. But it's definitely a hot topic. I encourage you to take a look. There's a lot. You can read the bill, and then there will be a vote possibly on Monday. It was laid over after taking a fair bit of testimony. So that's one of the bills that Senate State Affairs will be looking at. So thank you all again for coming. Thank you to our friends on Facebook for joining us. We encourage you to stick around, chat with one another. Feel free to reach out. Board members, if you want to raise your hands, if folks want to learn more about Common Cause, you can talk with those folks. But thank you again for joining us. We do these happy hours on the first Thursday of every month. Different topics. If you have ideas for topics, please let Caroline know, because we always love a vigorous conversation. So thank you.